This is the story of a boy who dared to chase magic in a world that told him he had no business doing so. See, in this world, mages sit at the top of the food chain. Magic is power, magic is status, magic is everything. And if you weren't born with it, you were basically society's reject pile. Our guy Oscar was a genius with a sword, legitimately one of the greatest swordsmen alive, a true sword saint. But magic, not a single drop, never awakened, not once in his entire life. That is, until he died. Ian got sent back, reborn straight into his own past back when he was just a kid. And now, armed with the experience and instincts of a military genius who's already lived an entire lifetime, he walks into the academy and absolutely dismantles everyone there. But before we get into all of that, let's rewind. A massive monster tears through a burning city, leaving nothing but fire and ruin in its wake. Below, people are running for their lives, desperately trying to survive as the flames swallow everything around them. Amidst the chaos, a mage and a warrior step forward. These two are actually trying to face this thing head-on. The mage locks in, channeling his energy through his staff as magic circles begin to form and spin around him. He takes his stance, fully prepared, and winds up to unleash something massive. Strike after strike launches into the creature as it closes in, a full-on magical barrage. And the monster, it tanks every single hit and just keeps charging, doesn't even flinch. The magic detonates at full force and does absolutely nothing. Zero. The beast shrugs it off like it was nothing. From a safe distance, the other mages watch in stunned silence, slowly coming to the same devastating realization: the attack failed. That's when the creature pivots, dives hard, and comes barreling back at them for a counter. The warrior charges in fearlessly and lands a direct blow right into the monster's body, genuinely committed to this. His blade shatters on impact, just snaps clean, those scales don't even budge. He stares at the broken hilt in his hand, the creature's sheer resilience hitting him all at once. The monster doesn't waste a second, it retaliates instantly, striking right in front of him with brutal force. Direct hit, he gets sent flying through the air like he weighs nothing. Watching the warrior go down, a young man nearby panics. The situation is looking genuinely hopeless. But right at that moment, a skilled swordsman steps onto the battlefield to face the creature. He moves into position with his support team flanking him, sword already in hand, ready for war. He leaps from below and drives a precise, clean strike straight into the creature's chest. The monster takes the hit square on and recoils hard, letting out a massive, earth-shaking roar. Reflected in the creature's own eye, you can see the moment the strike lands on a vital point. That was no accident. He lands cleanly and watches the creature's shadow begin to dissolve. It's over. In his reaction to just slaying a giant monster, he turns around and sheathes his sword, calm, collected, unbothered. That's when it's revealed this man is Oscar, the sword saint himself. Survivors gather around him, relief and gratitude pouring out of every single one of them. He just tells them to handle the rest themselves and starts moving. Their voices calling after him don't even slow him down, he's already walking away. As he passes a father and son standing together in the aftermath, something stirs in the back of his mind, a memory. A little girl's voice saying what she's seeing is the most beautiful thing she's ever witnessed. And a man beside her explains with warmth in his voice that what she's looking at is called magic. With a wand, he conjured tiny glowing particles that drifted and floated through the air like something out of a dream. Even now, recalling that moment, Oscar carries this distant, quietly thoughtful look on his face. The family nearby watches him with pure admiration, in awe of everything he just did. But in his memory, it's that little girl, wide-eyed and completely mesmerized by that same spectacle, who stays with him. And standing right next to her, a young Oscar, smiling from ear to ear, just as amazed, just as captivated. He became the most powerful swordsman alive, and none of it ever replaced that one desire, magic. It never left him. As a child, he'd even managed to conjure tiny little spells with his own hands. That spark was always there. Cut to a mountainous region, and Oscar is deep in his daily training ritual. Wooden sword in hand, he winds up for another rep and swings with everything he has, slicing clean through the air. From a distance, two young disciples watch their master train alone out in the open field. One of them, curious, asks if he really trains out here every single day. The other confirms it without hesitation. And the proof, his feet have literally sunk into the earth over years of standing in that exact spot. That massive crater beneath him wasn't dug, it was formed, rep by rep, through years of relentless, unbroken training. Oscar doesn't even acknowledge them. He just turns, raises the sword, and gets back to it. His student watches him with wide, genuinely surprised eyes. Then he notices something and asks what the scroll is that she's holding. That's when it clicks for her. She remembers the message, snaps to attention, and shouts for her master. She runs straight toward him and breathlessly tells him, a letter arrived from the capital. He reads it over as she nervously asks if it's bad news. His response? It's a medal, and he is not pleased about the scheduling conflict. She laughs and points out that with his track record, he could easily land a high-ranking position in the capital. He immediately complains, factions, politics, all of it. There's no way he'd be able to train properly in a place like that. She says it's simply he must really love the sword. He pauses at that, looks off to the side. Something in those words makes him go quiet and reflective. Then with just the faintest smile, he says it's not like he actually enjoys it that much. And then comes the reveal he didn't choose the sword, his father ordered it. His student just stares at him, completely speechless. She did not see that coming. He confirms it plainly, the path of the swordsman was never something he chose for himself. He looks at her and says quietly that he actually envies her. She chose this path on her own. She admits she enrolled in the academy by her own choice, but now that she's here, she's scared. Her hands grip her clothes tightly as the anxiety shows through every bit of her body language. Here's the thing about this world, mages and swordsmen draw from completely different circuits for their power. If those two different energies ever mix inside a person, total bodily collapse. It's not a maybe, it's a guarantee. So the moment you pick a path, that's it. That choice defines your entire life. No takebacks. Oscar places a hand on her shoulder, gently trying to ease his apprentice's nerves. His advice, simple, if you're worried, just swing your sword. She smiles, nods, and thanks him, she gets it. Later that night, Oscar lies alone in his room, staring at the ceiling. And then the thought hits him, he has absolutely no right to be giving that advice. He thinks back to her words. She envied him for his talent with the sword. He looks down at his own hand and wonders, what would it actually feel like to have a talent for magic? And then he does exactly what he told her to do, he repeats it to himself, just swing the sword. Then something shifts, he senses it, something wrong, and his eyes snap open. Outside, a massive explosion tears through the night without warning. Through the flames, a group of cloaked mages watches from a distance, completely calm, calculated. Their leader stands at the front, staff in hand, ready for whatever comes next. One mage asks if they got him. Another immediately tells him not to let his guard down yet. Smart call, because Oscar bursts straight out of the rubble, very much alive, and the mages don't hide their shock. He charges toward them and sizes them up in seconds. These aren't amateurs. These are powerful mages. His eyes move quickly, scanning the group, trying to identify who's running this operation. The leader gives the order, everyone attack, all at once. Oscar grips his sword and stands his ground, ready to take on every single one of them. He weaves between strikes, leaping over attacks and turning each dodge into a counter. He closes the gap and lands a direct hit on one of the cloaked mages. Then he freezes. Something catches his eye and his expression shifts to pure shock and dread. The leader has his student, hostage, staff at her throat, and the order is clear, drop the sword. Bound and gagged, she's absolutely terrified, but she can't say a word. Oscar demands to know what they want. The leader's answer is clean and simple, his life. He's genuinely confused. He has no idea what he could have possibly done to earn this kind of hatred. The leader smiles and says he figured as much. Of course he wouldn't remember. Another mage speaks up, they cannot forgive the mere existence of someone with talent like his. Oscar has absolutely no idea what they're talking about and demands an explanation. The leader tells him it doesn't matter, he won't be leaving this place alive anyway. Oscar's gaze drifts to his student, still held hostage, still terrified, and then she shouts, tells her master not to worry about her, not to hold back. He looks at her and something shifts completely in his eyes, pure, unshakable determination. He grips his sword and says quietly that he finally understands the whole situation. The mage leader doesn't understand the change in his demeanor. What just happened? Oscar warns them their plan is already over. They should never have underestimated his disciple. The mage holding her hostage starts to panic, feeling the situation slip out of his control. Oscar turns his back, completely still, as a volley of ice strikes come flying straight at him. They close in at full speed, aimed dead center at his body. Impact. A massive cloud of smoke erupts from the spot. The leader, confident just a moment ago, is suddenly horrified by what he sees through the smoke. He remarks on the girl's courage, the sheer audacity it took to make that move. And there's Oscar, body pierced, bleeding, standing between her and the attack. He tells them this is what swordsmen do. She sees him gravely wounded and runs to him in a panic, desperation written all over her face. The mages turn and leave, talking amongst themselves about what a waste of talent it all was. She grabs him and asks through tears why he did that, why he'd let himself get hurt this badly for her. He smiles and says it's simply he's a swordsman just like her. She's crying, telling him she was prepared to die in that fight, she had already accepted it. She blames herself, but he shakes his head. It wasn't her fault, none of it, she can't accept that. She just holds on to him, sobbing, refusing to let go. He uses the last of his strength to try and say something, but the words won't come. In his mind, only one regret surfaces, that he wasn't a mage, that he couldn't protect her as one, and in that final moment he finally admits it, to himself at least. He always wanted to use magic, always. Running from that truth, he just kept swinging his sword, kept training, kept pushing it down. All the admiration, all the titles, all the victories, and he never once forgot what he truly wanted. Nothing in his entire life compared to the feeling he had as a child watching magic for the very first time. Then he reaches toward a sky he doesn't recognize and finds himself somewhere completely unknown. He jolts upright, stares at his hand, and has absolutely no idea what's going on. He touches his head, steadies himself, and slowly realizes he should be dead right now. He looks around in confusion, trying to make sense of where he even is. Then the scenery registers, he recognizes it. This is his old childhood village. He remembers dying, he remembers the cold, and yet here he is, alive in a place from his past. Beside his sword on the ground, there's a letter. He has no idea what it is or where it came from. He opens it and his eyes go wide. Whatever's written inside just changed everything. In his hands are invitations, not one, two, from the two biggest academies in the entire kingdom. At 15, every young person receives an invitation to either the Academy of Magic or the Academy of Swordsmanship. That's the rule. Once you choose, you take your letter to the Academy's gate, and that's it, your path is set. He holds the letter and catches his reflection staring back at him. The question starts forming in his mind, is this real? Did he actually come back? He pieces it together, he's 14 again, before the sword, before all of it. Footsteps approach and he stays crouched, staring at the ground, processing. His father's voice, calling his name, asking what he's doing out here alone. Oscar snaps upright, heart lurching, and blurts out that it's his father, and then it really hits him. If he's back, then his father is alive, standing right there in front of him. His father takes one look at him and says he looks arrogant and that he's been slacking on his training. Oscar just stares at the horizon, doesn't say a word. Because back then the only thing on his mind was how to tell his father the truth, that he wanted magic, not the sword. His father was a sword master, one of the best, responsible for training an entire generation of disciples. And as his son, Oscar naturally started down the same path. Naturally, whether he wanted to or not. In a memory, a young Oscar comes sprinting in, buzzing with excitement. Someone showed him magic and he can barely contain himself. He describes it with pure joy, how radiant it was, how beautiful, how unlike anything he'd ever seen. His father's expression doesn't move. He says flatly that magic is a technique for the weak. Then he grabs Oscar by the shoulders and makes it very clear, as his son, he will use the sword. And so Oscar trained, every day. Even while the dream of magic quietly burned in the background, back in the present, he rises and turns to face what's ahead, and there's something different in his eyes now. He grips the sword tightly and thinks no, he is done with that ending. This life, he decides, belongs to him. He'll walk the path he actually wants. His father asks again, why has he been neglecting his training? Oscar turns away slightly and answers without hesitation, he's already spent a whole lifetime with the sword. His father goes quiet, just stares at him. That answer didn't make any sense, and yet something in it landed. Then Oscar lets it out, summoning multiple energy swords that erupt into the air around him. One of the men nearby feels the pressure before it even fully unfolds and stumbles back. Two others get thrown to the ground entirely, unable to withstand the force Oscar just released. And Oscar himself, standing completely still at the center of all of it, calm as ever. One of the men stares in disbelief, genuinely struggling to understand how a kid can be this composed. His father holds firm, taking it head-on, meeting his son's gaze without flinching. And in that moment, his father knows this isn't his son messing around. He disperses the technique, exhales, and admits it. Oscar clearly wasn't just playing games. He steps forward and places a hand on his son's shoulder, acknowledging the strength in front of him. Then he says it, one day he'll be able to entrust the guild to him. The other men watching can't hide it, pure envy on every face. His father allows himself a small smile, then turns and starts walking. Oscar stands there watching him go, quietly sitting with that moment. Then he moves and wraps his arms around his father from behind, holding on with everything he has. Two of the men close in, grinning, saying they've been looking forward to seeing him again. One of them offers, with a smile that doesn't quite reach his eyes, to give the boy a little sword lesson. Oscar remembers. He knows exactly who these two are and exactly what this is. These were his training partners, assigned by his father, always there by his father's request. But the moment they awakened their energy, they stopped seeing him as an equal and started leaving him behind. And they'd use these so-called training sessions to take out every frustration they had on him, all while playing the role of teacher. Back in the present, Oscar takes his stance, ready to face the same man all over again. The man tells him to hurry it up, channeling energy straight into his wooden sword. That energy creates a power gap that in the past no amount of technique could bridge. Oscar's response? He turns around and starts walking toward the river. Just leaves, sword in hand. He's grateful, genuinely grateful for everything that brought him to this moment. The man behind him is completely floored. He cannot process what he's watching. Then Oscar throws the sword into the river and the man nearly trips over himself in shock. They start shouting, calling him a coward, asking if he's actually running away from this fight. The man loses it, furious, and charges forward with his wooden sword raised. Oscar doesn't even turn around. Back to all of them, eyes on the horizon, completely done with this. With a smile, he says it plainly, he's going to be a mage. The sword isn't his anymore. The man screams that he's not holding back and comes sprinting at him, sword swinging. Oscar watches the attack come in, reading every movement, every muscle like he's done this 1,000 times. Because he has. His rival poured sword energy through his entire body, a technique that used to be untouchable. Oscar raises a barrier and stops it cold. Man nearly falls over from the shock. Then Oscar says it calm and direct, that's not enough to beat him. His rival's teeth grind together, he cannot stand being talked to like that. He swings again and again, each strike burning with fury and misses every single one. Oscar realizes it mid-fight, his rival is still fighting like it's just another training session. Old habits. Man erupts in frustration, screaming about why he can't land a single hit. Oscar extends his hand and starts wrapping this up. One clean, efficient move and the sword is out of his opponent's hand. He steps on it, follows through, and drops his rival to the ground with one strike. Face in the dirt, his rival snarls and calls him every name he can think of. Oscar stands over him, preparing to close it out. Then he pauses and asks, why would he bother finishing off a disarmed opponent? He glances back at the others, who are already moving in to restrain the still furious rival. Oscar thinks it over for a moment. Yeah, this should keep him out of his way for a while. Thinking back to his past life, he remembers what happened. His father forcibly awakened his energy for him. He's not letting that happen again. This time he masters magic first, that's the plan. He continues down the road alone, walking through a quiet stretch of forest. He wipes the sweat from his face and scouts the area, nobody around. Good, he stops in front of a large rock, nobody can see him here. Perfect. A memory surfaces, a mage asking him how magic actually works. He explains it from a swordsman's perspective. They refine energy and direct it into their body or their blade. The mage listens carefully, genuinely curious, following every word. She's sitting beside a garden and she shifts, ready to show him what she means. She reaches down and picks up a watering can sitting on the ground next to her. For mages, she says, using magic is like watering plants. Kin is the vessel, the water is the mana. He doesn't quite follow and asks her to explain what she means. She breaks it down, mana flows through circuits and gets poured into a magical formula to activate. The moment she casts the spell, the flowers around her start to bloom one by one. Back in the present, Oscar settles onto the rock and starts to meditate. He holds onto what the mage told him, mana fills the air everywhere. It's all around him right now. He sits there, eyes open, staring up at the sky, trying to tune into the world around him. He closes his eyes, confident if he can draw in the mana using his heightened senses, this should work. After all, as a swordsman, he spent years sharpening every single one of his 5 senses to their absolute limit. So he closes his eyes and reaches inward, searching for the flow of mana. And he finds it, the pulse of nature itself, the birds. The current of the water, even the fish beneath the surface. He cracks one eye open, something just shifted. And there it is, mana. Visible, flowing, weaving through the entire forest around him like invisible rivers suddenly made real. His eyes go wide, he can actually see it. He can see the magical energy. He lets out a shout of triumph, then immediately realizes he has no idea how to absorb any of it. The celebration ends about 3 seconds after it started. A noise snaps him back. He spins toward the sound instantly. He hits the ground, something just struck the rock right beside his head. Close, he senses the mana coming off it. Something is very off about this place. He gets to his feet and decides he's going toward it. He moves through the trees step by step, closing in on the source of that energy, but there's something strange. He can't sense any living presence out there at all. Then an attack comes out of nowhere and he throws himself flat to dodge it. Dust kicks up all around him as he scrambles, shaken by the sheer force of whatever just swung at him. He looks up and standing right in front of him is a massive stone golem. He genuinely has to ask himself what something like that is doing in the middle of nowhere. Then, someone drops from the sky and lands directly in front of him. A woman lands clean on top of the golem's head and fixes him with a hard, intense stare. She waves, almost casually, and asks what exactly he's doing in her private workshop. The casual wave is immediately replaced with a look that could freeze fire as she asks if he's here after her research. She then tells him very clearly to think very carefully before he decides what to say next. She stands there in front of him, watching him with open suspicion and zero patience. And Oscar's memory kicks in rumors of a woman from the frozen north. A mage who could command golems single-handedly and was said to be worth an entire army on her own. The creation mage, the terrifying, legendary Isabel, and he's meeting her in chains, not exactly the first impression he had in mind. She sits on her throne, if you can call it that, and demands to know which faction he belongs to. Immediately, then she levels her staff at him, mana already building at the tip. A massive magic circle erupts across the floor, trapping him completely in place. No escape. He panics and yells for her to wait, desperately trying to stop what's coming. He tells her he didn't resist capture because he has no reason to, he's not her enemy. She pauses, studies him, seems to actually consider whether that's worth anything. Then she stands, raises her spell, and calmly bids farewell to the nameless mage in front of her. He shouts it, he's not even a mage, not a real one. That stops her cold. She lowers the attack and just stares at the chained boy in front of her. With a smirk, she tells him that is a genuinely pathetic excuse. She places her hand on his head and begins casting something unknown magic, slow and deliberate. Her eye lights up, and then she goes still, surprised by what she just found. No mana, his circuits are completely empty, not a trace of flow anywhere. Scene shifts, they're in a room now. She says she finally understands what she's dealing with. She's sipping tea, completely unbothered, and makes it clear she has absolutely no intention of apologizing. She sighs and says she's already a target for half the world, she can't be too careful. Oscar blinks and asks if she's really a professor at the Magic Academy. He cannot believe his luck. He can barely contain it. If she's at the academy, this is his shot. His actual shot. She takes another slow sip and stares at him over the rim with the most withering look imaginable. He sits up straight, braces himself, and prepares to ask the most important question of his life. He asks her please to teach him how to manifest mana. She shuts it down without a moment's hesitation. No interest, talentless losers are not her department. She tells him to finish his tea and get out. He thinks about his death, about everything that led to that moment, and he decides no, not again, he's not backing down, not from this. So instead of leaving, he quietly asks if he can have another cup of tea, all while thinking hard about how to find the angle that actually convinces her. That's when his special vision kicks in and he starts reading the mana flowing around him. And there it is, a flaw, a break in the energy flow inside her golem. He points at the golem and says something's wrong with it. Right on cue, the golem starts to shake and loses its grip on the teapot. The thing smacks her on the head and dumps hot liquid all over her. Oscar shoots to his feet, calls out her name, and moves to help without a second thought. He explains the circuits in the golem's right shoulder look completely clogged. The energy in that exact shoulder starts visibly failing, confirming everything he just said. She stares at him, genuinely impressed against her will. How did he know? She grabs his arm and demands to know how he found that out. Specifically, how did he know the shoulder was the problem? He says it simply, the mana flow through that part of the golem looked completely wrong to him. She pauses, because she knows mana is supposed to be invisible. He meets her eyes and confirms it calmly. He can see the flow of mana. That explains it, she says. That's how he broke through her barrier so easily. She wonders aloud if it has something to do with his background as a swordsman. Then another thought crosses her mind, her enemy. He had this same kind of ability. And in that instant, she understands this is the talent her enemy envied so desperately. She calls his name, and when she looks at him again, her expression is completely different. And then, with a smile, she agrees to teach him how to use mana. He blinks, she literally just told him no, he points this out. She extends her hand and tells him simply he's piqued her interest. He doesn't need to be told twice. He grabs her hand with a huge smile, they shake on it. The deal is sealed, training begins. She lays out the basics. Mana is already being absorbed by the body naturally all the time. He asks the real question, what does he actually need to do to make it flow through his circuits? She demonstrates mana only moves when a magical formula is activated to direct it. He looks at the drawing she's showing him and asks what in the world that strange formula is. She holds up a scroll and explains it's the introductory spell given to every academy freshman. He gets excited and asks what kind of magic it is. She just smiles and says it's a surprise. She instructs him, feel the power circulating inside and pour it into the formula. He grins and says he'll give it absolutely everything he has. She thinks to herself that this exercise typically takes at least a month to crack. But then again, if his talent is the real deal, maybe, just maybe, he could cut that down to half, 2 weeks tops. He figures that's her generous estimate. He sits with her instruction in mind and begins to focus inward. He frames it in terms he already understands. It's like refining energy just turned inward instead of outward. He closes his eyes and starts reaching for it deep inside. Somewhere in there he searches, feeling for the mana that has to be there. And then a quiet smile spreads across his face. He found it. He places his hand on the scroll and a purple magic circle begins to bloom outward from his palm. His eyes open. She was right. It's real. He looks at the scroll in his hand and sees it clearly. The mana was right there the whole time. Mastering mana is like learning to walk with a brand new pair of legs. Nobody comes into the world knowing how. You fall, you get back up, and eventually you find your footing. Isabel stands there completely frozen, staring at what just happened. Even the greatest mages in the world take real time learning to work with mana. That's just the truth. Oscar looks up at the sky, watching the energy particles he just created drift freely above him. Isabel walks toward him slowly, still struggling to believe what her own eyes are showing her. She can't wrap her head around it. He mastered it. First try, one attempt. She thinks back to their earlier conversation, the way he answered about the golem without hesitation. She wonders if it's purely because he can see mana, but whatever the reason, she's already certain about this boy. This kid has a genuine, undeniable talent for magic. No question. Oscar looks at the result in front of him and finally feels it land. This is real magic. This is it. Isabel's face breaks into a wide grin. She calls out to him and tells him flat out what he just did was incredible. She slaps him on the back, half laughing, still barely believing he pulled it off on the very first try. Then he says it's not good enough, and she just stares at him. He looks at the magic in front of him and says it's not beautiful. He's back in that memory again, the one from childhood, the first magic he ever saw. That smile on his face back then, it said everything. Pure, unfiltered admiration. He says magic is supposed to be something special, something beautiful, and this doesn't feel like that. He points at the scroll and says something about the spell feels off, wrong somehow. He tells her just like the golem, the mana flow in the spell is strange, unnatural. He turns to her and asks what she thinks. She's visibly caught off guard, and in that moment something finally clicks for him. He knows exactly what he wants. He clenches his fist and says he doesn't want to settle for being just another mage. He says it out loud. He wants to cast magic that is perfect. Magic that is truly beautiful. And Isabel, completely unfazed, tells him if he found something wrong with it, he should have rewritten it. He almost jolts forward. That answer just opened a door he didn't know existed. He asks how does he actually draw the magical formulas himself? How does he write his own spells? Meanwhile, elsewhere, Oscar's father walks alone down a long castle corridor, footsteps echoing. Something's on his mind. He's recalling something. Back at the training ground, his rivals are still on the ground trying to figure out how Oscar got that strong. His father approaches and asks what happened. They try to play it off, just training, nothing serious. His father's expression makes it very clear that answer isn't going to cut it. He wants the truth. They stiffen, they're scared, and they prepare to tell him everything. One of the men steps forward and lays out the whole story. The father listens in complete silence, doesn't move, just watches the man finish. Then he says, quietly, that he finds it hard to believe Oscar defeated all of them. He tells them to get their injuries treated. He wants them ready for tomorrow's training. The man bows his head and says he understood every word. His father turns back to the horizon and something in his expression settles like a clock that just struck the right hour. With a faint smile, he says it's time to bestow the sword's energy. Cut to elsewhere, a library packed wall to wall with books, scrolls, and research materials. Oscar says he had no idea magical formulas were this deep, this complex. Isabel offers to lend him books, as many as he needs, so he can go even further. She smiles and confirms it. Everything she knows is in there. She turns to tell him something and the boy is gone, just vanished from in front of her. He reappears with an enormous stack of books and announces he'll take all of them. She asks if he's serious about taking everything. He reminds her she said he could. She calls out to him. There's something important she needs to say before he walks out. She tells him she needs to warn him about something, even if it kills his excitement a little. The moment he housed mana in his body, he officially crossed a line. He is now a mage. And because of that, he needs to be extremely careful with how he handles a sword from this point forward. A quick flash, his father's face appears in his mind. She finishes the warning plainly. If he slips up, he won't just get hurt, he'll die. Scene shifts, Oscar's village. He watches everything from a distance, mounted on his horse, still and quiet. He's back, and he looks exhausted, carrying something heavy behind his eyes. Inside the house, his father is in bed, sick, and says it's been a long time. Oscar stops at the bedside and hears his father's voice, recognizing him, saying his name. He kneels, his father reaches out. In a memory, his father touches him and says it clearly. He truly has talent. And then he says forcing him away from magic was not a mistake. Those words left a wound that never quite healed. His father had taken the path from him not out of cruelty but conviction, and it didn't matter. But now, holding the registration letter, Oscar has a new chance, a real one this time. He stands at the gates of the Magic Academy, and he's ready to walk through them. Thinking of his father, he makes a silent vow. This time he enrolls in magic. No compromise. Elsewhere, a mysterious man stands alone watching a fire burn. He sees the boy approaching and asks calmly if he has some business here. Oscar meets his gaze and states his purpose. He's here to get his registration signed. They stand face to face. Neither speaks. The silence is heavy. The man says it can wait. Oscar says it can't. Something about the boy's tone gets under the man's skin. He doesn't hide it. Oscar explains it can't wait because he needs his father's signature. His father asks him directly, why magic? Why did he choose this path? Oscar brings it back. He reminds his father of the conversation they had years ago when he first said he wanted magic. His father picks up the pen, doesn't answer the question, just prepares to sign. Then he points at Oscar and says what he said back then, it was foolishness. Plain and simple. Oscar asks him, was it really just foolishness, nothing more? His father lowers his head slightly and says yes. To him, it was exactly that. Then he reaches out and touches Oscar and is immediately hit by a wave of magical energy. He recoils in shock, demanding to know what kind of joke this is. He asks, has Oscar already fully mastered mana already? Oscar says with a slight smile that he didn't exactly expect to convince his father through words alone. His father's patience snaps. What is he trying to convince him of exactly? Oscar tells him defeating swordsmen without drawing a sword is proof enough of his talent. He tells his father he knows exactly what he's capable of. His father erupts, he doesn't know anything. He says success is guaranteed if Oscar becomes a swordsman. Guaranteed, that's not nothing. Oscar agrees his father's assessment is correct. And then he says that success and happiness are not the same thing. They never were. Father and son face each other, two completely different ideas of what the future should look like, about to collide. His father exhales and puts a hand to his face. He says he understands. He says it makes sense. Oscar watches him, waiting, reading the room. Then his father's expression darkens. He says this situation can still be fixed. He asks Oscar, do you want to die? The words land like a threat. If the boy insists on the wrong path, he will bring him back to his senses, one way or another. He draws his sword and says he'll make Oscar see reason. Even if the boy doesn't accept it today, he says one day he'll be grateful. Oscar meets his eyes and says it with quiet certainty, that day will never come, father. And in his past life it never did. His father points the blade and tells him to pick up his weapon. He says he'll give Oscar at least that much time to prepare. Oscar closes his eyes, breathes, centers himself for the fight ahead. Then his eyes open, and his father is looking back at something that's no longer just a boy. He holds up the letter and says it clearly, he is a mage now, not a swordsman. The letter from the Magic Academy is the proof. His choice in his own hand. Then he turns and throws it into the fire and the paper burns completely. His father goes still, then furious. He cannot understand what he's watching. Oscar faces him with a challenge, come and take it from me then. His father moves forward, telling the boy to try his luck. He warns him not to get arrogant just because he withstood the energy earlier. His father moves fast and stops the blade inches from Oscar's neck, but Oscar reads it like he's the one holding the sword. He can see the attack forming before it happens. He's been watching his father fight since childhood, every stance, every tell, every habit. What's reflected in his eyes now is proof. He learned everything there was to learn from this man. His father unleashes a full storm of strikes, an attack designed to cover every possible angle. Oscar slips through all of it without breaking a sweat. He tells his father the truth. The person he admired most in this world was him. His father steps back and acknowledges it. Oscar genuinely lives up to his words. He even praises the way he moved, the way he dodged every strike, without touching his own energy at all. His father admits it then, the talent with the sword is real. Undeniable. He makes an offer, take my energy, accept it. Let me give it to you. Oscar remembers exactly what his father said a moment ago, that he would make him surrender. With a small smile he asks, is his father trying to get him to yield? His father calls him a fool, shaking his head in disbelief. Oscar says it plainly, just like his talent, there are things he won't give up, no matter what. He holds up the quill and doesn't back down. His father asks, is he actually planning to use that thing as a sword? Oscar explains it's a beginner's magic staff. Technically, he thinks of Isabel and says that in magic knowledge is everything. And the problem for his father right now, he has none of it. Oscar grips the quill and steadies himself. His father has no idea what's about to come. Every swordsman has patterns, tells, instincts. His father can't read a mage's next move because he's never had to. His father lunges forward, committing everything to a single devastating strike. Oscar's special vision lights up. He can see every part of the attack before it arrives. He summons several copies of himself, layering them as a shield against the blow. He slips out cleanly, completely unharmed, and allows himself the smallest smile. He appears behind his father without warning, closing in fast for the counter. And then he stops his father's blade, completely showing the gap between them. Quill in hand, Oscar lines up the magic he has always dreamed of using. He draws the formula from memory, everything Isabel taught him, flowing through the quill like it was always meant to. He goes back to the very beginning, the first time he ever saw magic, the image he's carried for an entire lifetime. He prepares to cast the spark spell, the one that started everything. A memory flickers, his mother sick, sitting in a rocking chair. His father stands there watching the sparks appear and has absolutely nothing to say. The spark spell finds its mark and a small burst of light blooms against his father's chest. His father stares at it, speechless, trying to understand what kind of magic that even was. Oscar is already moving, charging forward into his final attack. His father snaps out of it and demands to know if that was all just a distraction. Oscar answers by throwing him into the air. He lands, smooth and controlled, stopping right beside his father's fallen sword. The blade's reflection shows Oscar standing over him, quill pointed down, calm, composed. He explains he could read exactly how his father would react to his presence. He asks, was the goal to snatch the sword during the distraction? Oscar says that much, hiding your real objective, he learned directly from him. His father covers his face with one hand, frustrated and maybe just a little impressed. He says he can guarantee Oscar's talent, but talent doesn't guarantee anything in magic. That world plays by different rules. They stand face to face again, quiet. The tension between them is something different now. Oscar smiles and says he wasn't trying to prove superiority, he was showing his father the path he's chosen. Then he asks, did his father become a swordsman because someone guaranteed his talent too? Something crosses his father's face. A memory stirring. A man wondering aloud should his son follow the path of the sword. Sitting beside his wife, he says their son has real talent for it. She smiles and gently reminds him he only picked up a sword in the first place because he thought it looked cool. And she says they don't need to decide, their son will choose for himself. He says with a quiet smile that he thought his son would become a sword saint. Oscar watches him with open, unguarded hope in his eyes. But his father turns and walks away without another word. Oscar stands there confused and then hears the scratch of a pen. His father is signing the application, he's accepting it. Oscar stares at him, completely stunned. He didn't see that coming. His father looks up with a smirk and says he can't very well sign it with a magic quill, now can he? Scene change, the Magic Academy is alive with energy, preparing to receive its newest class of students. A man reviews a file and notes that this year's batch is exceptional. A woman adds that the princess and several nobles are among those enrolling. A young man smiles and mentions that many of them have already mastered their family's hereditary magic. A fourth figure holds a file but keeps his face turned away. No one in the room seems to know who he is. An instructor asks if there are any concerns about the incoming students. The mystery man says they are worthy of the saint class lineage. High praise. Meanwhile, somewhere else entirely, Oscar sits studying magic using the quill as both staff and pen. Out front of the dormitory, his father waits for him with a quiet smile. He turns to face Oscar and there's something unmistakable in his eyes, pride. 6 months passed, and today finally is the day Oscar heads to the academy. Oscar walks with a smile and says it went by faster than he expected. His father reminds him that everyone else has been working on their magic during that same time. He won't be the only one who prepared. He tells Oscar to stay strong, this was the path he chose and the road ahead reflects that. Oscar looks him in the eye and promises he'll be fine. He adds, smiling, that there's nobody scarier in the world than his father. So what does he have to worry about? His father smiles back. He knows the boy is ready. Then he says goodbye, turns and walks away. Oscar stands there holding the letter and lets himself feel it. He's actually going to the Magic Academy. He walks past other students and finally, after everything, reaches the place he's been heading toward his whole life, the Magic Academy. A dream he carried through an entire lifetime and a death. The gates open before him and he steps into a world unlike anything he's ever known. Beyond the gates, a massive, breathtaking castle rises up in front of him. Mages fill the courtyard, casting spells in every direction to welcome the arriving students. Magical gnomes march through the crowd playing their instruments, putting on a full welcome ceremony. Other students zip past overhead on broomsticks at impressive speed. Oscar takes it all in with a grin and says the atmosphere here is nothing like the Sword Academy. The gnomes keep playing, filling the air with music as the new students pour in around them. Oscar crouches down to get a closer look at one of them, genuinely wondering what exactly is the difference between a gnome and a golem. Then he remembers he has registration to deal with and shoots back to his feet before he's late. He turns and Isabel is standing right there in front of him. He grins and says he hopes she hasn't been slacking off these past few months. She smiles back and tells him to go ahead and surprise her again. He looks down the street and asks where all the other students are heading. She explains the selection exam for the first class is happening right there. Students are split into two groups, those with mana and those without, and above both of those there's a special class reserved for the most gifted of all. The exam exists for one reason, to separate the truly exceptional from everyone else. She advises him to skip it. He asks why. She tells him plainly the students who make it into that class are in a different category entirely. They're monsters. The elite who grew up breathing magic from the day they were born. Oscar smiles and says perfect, that means he can learn advanced magic. Isabel puts her hand on her forehead. She knew he was going to say that, she knew it. She sighs and tells him fine, come see it for himself. In an arena, two students are already going at it in an exhibition match. One of them deploys water magic as a defensive counter, holding the line. The wave surges forward, powerful, controlled, impressive. The student smiles, satisfied the hit landed. Oscar watches and figures out the format. The exam is about hitting a target using magic. Then a feeling creeps up on him, someone's watching. He turns and there's a white-haired man across the way gesturing for him to come over. Man calls him a commoner and tells him bluntly he has no business being here. He tells the boy to leave, right now. Oscar replies simply that he heard any new student could be accepted into the academy. The man scoffs and says he certainly has a way with words. And right then, Oscar understands exactly what Isabel meant. These students aren't just talented, they're a different breed. And more than that, if you're not nobility, you are simply not welcome in this class. The white-haired noble shoves past him and says he's next, tells Oscar to watch and learn. A woman with a staff takes position to oversee the next round. The noble steps into the arena, pulling his full magical energy to the surface. He declares that the first class belongs to those who gave everything to magic and nothing less. He begins to chant freeze all of existence, and ice magic erupts outward. Massive pillars of ice explode into existence, showing off power that fills the entire arena. The crowd reacts immediately, gasps stunned silence, pure awe. Oscar stands there, unable to deny it, that was genuinely impressive. People start murmuring, expected nothing less from House Galosis. Others wonder if he just went all in on that one strike. Then Oscar says it, he sees it now, this place isn't for him. He acknowledges it honestly, the noble's magic is impressive and the dedication behind it is real. But then, with just a slight smile, he says it's a waste, all of it. The noble snaps around, face tight. What did he just say about his magic? Oscar ignores him completely and turns to leave. Inside, he thinks he understands effort. He understands the weight of time poured into a single craft better than most. He smiles and says he's actually gained some confidence from watching that, thanks the noble for it. The crowd starts laughing. Someone points out he's using a pen for a wand. They joke that there's no way anything's coming out of that. The noble says his magic is flawless, not a single imperfection. Oscar steps into position in front of the ice. It's his turn. The noble explains his house specializes in ice. There are no flaws for this commoner to exploit. He scoffs at himself for even taking this seriously. The instructor gets ready to start the next attempt. She comments that this year really is as strong as the rumors said. She's particularly impressed with the one they're already calling the frontrunner, Zazin. But even with all of that, there's a feeling she can't quite shake, like something unexpected is about to happen. She watches the boy and wonders what has he been doing out there all this time. From the crowd, someone yells at him to give up if he can't hit anything. The instructor notices he's not moving. He's waiting for something and he is completely still. His special vision activates and he starts reading the ice magic structure in front of him. He sees everything, every crack, every gap, every weak point hidden inside those enormous pillars. He grips the quill and lets everything he's trained for rise to the surface. The instructor watches him and her expression shifts. She senses what's coming. He draws the magic formula and prepares a fire spell. He releases it and every single target goes down, all of them, clean. They hit the ground one by one, confirming not a single one was missed. The instructor stares. She doesn't know what to say. People start talking. He used basic magic, entry-level stuff, and still hit every target. Others say if he's really at this academy, he should be using something stronger. Oscar turns away from the crowd with a quiet smile and lets the comments go. The noble watches from where he landed and tries to figure out what spell Oscar was even planning to use. Flat on the ground, he mutters that this was all a massive waste of his time. Oscar turns to the instructor and asks, did he fail? She practically shouts 5 targets. He hit all 5. He passed without any issue whatsoever. Oscar tilts his head slightly, genuinely not understanding why she's reacting this way. He asks her plainly why does she look so shocked. She asks why he didn't just aim at them one by one if he was clearly capable of hitting them. and she tells him don't even think about saying it was luck. He puts a hand to his chin and thinks back to the noble's display. It really was impressive, technically speaking. He replays the ice pillars in his mind, the scale, the precision, the sheer mana density. And then he explains using that much mana for a single spell is a waste. On an actual battlefield, that gets you killed. She goes quiet, trying to process what he just said, a waste of mana. He explains his thinking. He assumed the exam was practical, so he treated it like a real battlefield scenario. She just stands there, looking at him, saying nothing because she doesn't have an answer for that. She catches herself, apologizes for cutting him off, and says she gets it now. Walking back through the city, Oscar replays the exam in his head, still processing what just happened. The instructor, meanwhile, can't stop thinking about it either, the vision, the nerve, the mana control he showed. In her mind, there's no question, this boy understands the true essence of magic better than anyone else who sat that exam. He walked in as an unknown and walked out as the most promising mage in that entire room. Oscar strolls back alone, quietly reflecting on everything his first day at the Magic Academy threw at him. He still can't quite believe it. On day one, he already ran into a mage that impressive. But then that familiar instinct kicks in, the one honed over a lifetime of combat. Someone is watching him. He stops mid-step and turns, scanning for whoever's there. His voice comes out calm but firm. He tells them to stop hiding and show themselves. A voice responds, genuinely impressed, complimenting his sharp eyes for catching on so fast. A figure steps forward, staff in hand, and extends a greeting. Then comes the introduction. The man's name is Balsamis, the Academy's headmaster. Oscar immediately bows and starts to apologize for his earlier tone, but the headmaster waves it off. Oscar stares at him, completely caught off guard. The headmaster, of all people. But then something pulls his attention, something that shouldn't be there, and his eyes go sharp. That necklace, he recognizes it. It's the same one the mysterious mage was wearing. He reaches out instinctively and asks if something is wrong. He hesitates for just a moment, then steadies himself and moves to greet the headmaster properly. But the moment he makes contact, a vision hits him, the headmaster, face twisted in pain. He yanks his hand back, visibly shaken by what he just saw. A powerful gust of wind erupts and throws him back, the headmaster's magical strength on full, casual display. Oscar gets sent sailing onto a rooftop and somehow sticks the landing. The headmaster floats there, looking genuinely intrigued, commenting on the reflexes it took to dodge that. He drifts in the air, turning the question over, just how sharp is this boy's intuition exactly? Oscar grips his quill and cuts straight to it. Did the headmaster come here to kill him? The headmaster raises an eyebrow and asks if the boy seriously thinks he can win with that thing. He swings his staff and a wind spell tears through the air. A prison of wind closes in around Oscar from every direction. No gaps, no exits. Oscar reads it immediately, a wind barrier, and there's no way through it. With no escape route, he shifts gears and starts pulling together a fire spell. He draws the formula and launches a fireball straight at the headmaster. It surges upward through the air, dead on course to hit him directly. The headmaster just watches it come, hovering there, completely unhurried. Then, with one casual motion of his staff, he deflects it like it was nothing. Oscar braces for the counter, but it doesn't come. The headmaster just watches him. And then Oscar realizes the headmaster deliberately deflected it in a way that let him defend himself. This was a test. The headmaster allows himself a small, satisfied smile. Apparently, the results were acceptable. Oscar looks around, genuinely confused, trying to piece together what just happened. He drops to one knee, watching the headmaster carefully, ready for whatever comes next. The headmaster asks if he's already out of tricks, then clarifies he was just running a test. He descends and lands cleanly, and Oscar wastes no time asking what any of this was actually about. The headmaster wanted him to feel it firsthand, what it's like to be targeted specifically because of your talent. Then his expression goes serious. He admits he had underestimated just how much potential the boy actually has. Oscar asks the obvious follow-up, is he going to keep being a target just for standing out at the academy? The headmaster confirms it. Extremists don't tolerate talented commoners, that's just the reality of this world. Oscar doesn't need a long explanation, he already lived through this. Mysterious mages, a coordinated attack, his student taken hostage. They told him flat out they couldn't forgive his existence, that his talent alone was reason enough to die. He steps forward and asks directly, who are the extremists? Tell me their names. He demands it, who are the people that came after him? The headmaster says nothing, just holds his gaze. Then he speaks, knowing who they are would only put Oscar in more danger, not less. His advice is simple, focus on learning to protect yourself, that's what the academy is for. Oscar locks that away, thinks about the kind of power he actually needs right now. He runs the numbers. If the headmaster had been an enemy just now, he'd already be dead. No question, he closes his eyes. The frustration of his own limits is written all over his face. Then he opens them, turns to the headmaster, and decides there's one more thing he needs to ask. He asks about the pendant, the one hanging around the headmaster's neck. The headmaster looks at him, a flicker of surprise crossing his face. He asks if there's something unusual about the proof of a magic saint. Oscar goes still. A magic saint, that's the title, and he understands instantly what that means. The mage world's answer to the sword saint, the absolute pinnacle of magical achievement. The headmaster then says he has something to give him and flicks a coin in his direction. Oscar catches it and turns it over in his hand, wondering if it's some kind of badge. The headmaster tells him not to lose it. It'll come in handy before long. Oscar watches him walk away, still feeling the weight of the power the man just casually threw around. Not a single ripple in his mana, not even a trace of disturbance. The headmaster is on a completely different level. Oscar closes his hand around the badge. He can't just stand here being impressed. He'd told himself that learning magic would be enough, that this new life would be different. But remembering his death, remembering the moment he couldn't protect the people he cared about, he knows that's not enough. It was never going to be enough. He clenches his fist and says it plainly. He needs to surpass the man he was as the Sword Saint. That's the new bar. Elsewhere, two students are talking, noting that the new kid was the first to arrive and that he hit every single target during the exam. The noble scoffs and dismisses it, says the commoner will be eliminated soon enough. Then a man enters the room and moves toward the gathered students. He steps forward and prepares to make an announcement. Noble sits back, watching him with open contempt. Then the noble's expression shifts, shock replacing the sneer as he stares at whoever just walked in. Oscar steps into the room and makes his way to his seat among the other students. The noble can't believe what he's seeing. How did this guy actually make it here? He mutters to himself, trying to figure out what could have possibly happened. Meanwhile, Oscar is talking with Isabel, telling her straight up that gaining power to protect himself has to be the priority now. He sits with his eyes closed, pouring his concentration into training his mana. And through repetition, he figures something out. Every time he fully discharges his power, his mana pool grows. It's working. His eyes open, and the look on his face is different now, clearer, more resolved. He stands at his window, still staring out at the world beyond the academy walls. He looks down at his hand and says what he needs next, real combat experience. Then mid-sit, something snaps his attention and he spins around. He gets up and heads for the door, remarking that this is the first time this has ever happened. Adjusting his gloves, he says it out loud. This is genuinely the first time in his life he's wanted to become stronger for himself. He arrives at the location and immediately finds himself looking up at a group of 3 guys who are very clearly looking down on him. The white-haired noble spots him and the sneer comes instantly. That guy. He wonders out loud what could have brought their protagonist here of all places. The surrounding students notice his arrival too. A ripple of surprise moves through the crowd. Scanning the room, Oscar's eyes move past his rival and land on someone else entirely. A girl with glasses sitting quietly by herself. He finds himself wondering who she is. She's reading, completely absorbed, and a bookmark slips out and drifts to the floor beside her. Oscar moves fast and scoops it up before anyone can step on it. He walks over and asks if the bookmark is hers. He holds it out, returning what she dropped without making a thing of it. Her face lights up and she thanks him genuinely and warmly. He glances at the bookmark and comments that she seems to really love flowers. She blinks at him, confused, not quite sure what he means by that. He introduces himself as Oscar and asks if he can sit next to her. She tells him her name is Lily. Right then, a voice cuts through the room and everyone's heads turn. The students look around, trying to figure out where the voice came from. It seemed to be coming from a nearby table, specifically from inside a book. Then the book's pages start flying, just launching themselves all over the room. Every student, including Oscar's rival, watches the pages spiral through the air in stunned silence. A woman emerges from the commotion and introduces herself, Ruth, the person in charge of this class. Oscar recognizes her immediately. She's the teacher from the first class exam. She announces it next week. They're doing combat classes, field training. Oscar's whole energy shifts the moment he hears that. He puts his fist on the table, barely containing it. He's actually getting combat experience this soon. To keep things balanced, she explains they'll be organizing into teams of 5. A few students ask the obvious question, does combat strength just mean raw magical power? She wags her finger, not quite. The measurement is total body mana capacity. Oscar sits beside Lily, listening carefully to every word. Ruth smiles and gets ready to run the measurement. She finishes quickly, every student's capacity measured in moments. Then the students notice it, small spheres of light flickering into existence above their heads. Lily blinks in surprise at the sphere hovering above her. Ruth turns her back and tells them to pay attention to the light intensity of each one. That's the reading. Above the noble rival, a large, bright sphere appears, impressive enough that the student next to him visibly reacts. Another student nearby, quiet and serious-faced, has a sphere that matches it in intensity. A third boy, lounging back with a relaxed grin, also gets a sphere that draws attention. Ruth looks over the class and says what she sees: several genuinely talented mages in this group. And above Oscar's head, a small, faint little sphere, and he stares at it with a deeply confused expression. The mockery doesn't take long. Other students start saying nobody's going to want him on their team. Oscar tunes it out. Right now, that's not the problem he's thinking about. Then a hand lands on his shoulder and he turns sharply. It's Lily. She's asking him to join her group. He asks if she's sure about that. She says anyone who appreciates flowers is a good person in her book. But she tells him she needs to check with someone named Levin first. Oscar has no idea who that is. Across the room, a red-haired guy looks up from his seat and asks Lily if she's seriously trying to bring that guy in. Oscar steps forward and says confidently that yes, he would very much like to join. The two of them size each other up. The redhead takes his time reading the situation. He leans back, rests his hand on the table, and says it's a noble's duty to look after the weak. So he agrees Oscar can join as the baggage carrier. With that settled, the students start moving around the room to form their groups. One student turns and fixes Oscar and Lily with a look of pure contempt as they pass. Lily notices it. She doesn't say anything right away. Then she tells Oscar not to let it bother him. The gap between their standings is just something people see as natural. He tells her it's fine and thanks her for bringing him into the group. She asks about his background and he tells her he's been studying magic for about 6 months. They stop walking. She wants to hear more about that. She stares at him with wide eyes and asks if he really means just 6 months. He turns to her, a little puzzled by how shocked she is. Down the hall, Ruth is heading out after finishing her instructions for the students. The white-haired noble calls out to her, "Professor Ruth." She stops and asks what's wrong. He asks her directly, why is that commoner in the first class at all? He keeps going. The boy has no mana to speak of, no real power, nothing. He clenches his fist and says flatly that an amateur like that won't be able to keep up. Ruth smiles and asks if he's talking about young Oscar. She looks at the boy, really looks at him, and starts to share something important. She reveals it simply: Oscar only awakened his mana 6 months ago. The noble looks like he's been hit. She adds that given his potential, he may very well surpass the noble before long. She turns and keeps walking, finishing her point as she goes. Her final word on it: the field training exists specifically to weed out those who can't keep up. Scene shift, the classroom sits completely empty now. A chart appears showing what everyone in this world already knows: nobles are born with naturally high mana levels. Oscar takes it in and says he understands. He remarks that reaching that kind of mana level at his age is genuinely impressive. Lily lights up and says that he's the one who's actually incredible in all of this. She grabs him and practically shouts reaching that level in 6 months is unheard of. It doesn't happen. Oscar smiles and says his master must have been really something. He takes the opening and asks, what exactly is her relationship with Levin? She explains with a smile Levin's family is one of the most prestigious noble houses around. His name carries enough weight that other students follow him voluntarily in exchange for the protection that comes with it. She adds that Levin is genuinely skilled. When things get serious, he'll be the one holding the line. Oscar listens and looks just a little uneasy about the idea of needing someone else's protection. Scene change, the forest. The students are assembled and ready for the start of field training. Ruth stands in front of everyone and says she'll lay out the rules. The task: survive 1 full night in a forest that is full of monsters. Oscar hears this and thinks, another completely practical test right after the exam. This academy doesn't mess around. She holds up a scroll and tells them it contains a barrier and a flare. One student scoffs that it sounds simple: if things go bad, just use the paper. Ruth then adds the catch: any group that uses the paper gets immediately demoted from the first class. The room of confident students collectively loses it. Panic sets in fast. Oscar reads the room and understands staying in the first class isn't just a preference. For these students, it's everything. Levin crosses his arms and says that as long as he's there, dropping out isn't an option. He promises the group he'll protect everyone, full confidence. The students start organizing, each one moving toward their assigned group. A massive camping backpack gets dropped on the ground near Oscar's group. Levin points at it and tells Oscar to stop standing around and carry the equipment. Lily looks worried, but Oscar tells her he's got it. Levin watches him bend down to grab it and says he likes people who understand their place. Oscar hoists the pack onto his back and falls in step with the group as they head into the forest. Then Levin, the guy who promised to protect everyone, trips and goes straight down. He's on the ground, clearly hurt, while the rest of the group just watches and doesn't know what to do. Oscar walks over and extends a hand, asking if he can get up. Levin stares at the outstretched hand like it personally offended him. He explodes, tells Oscar to shut up and back off. Oscar shrugs it off and moves ahead, turning to check on Lily instead. Levin watches him go, visibly struggling to understand how someone can just not care about any of this. Oscar keeps his eyes moving as they walk, noting quietly that they haven't crossed a single monster yet. Then something snags his attention, an anomaly in the forest that doesn't belong. The deeper they go, the more the environment around them begins to shift. Something is wrong. He shouts for everyone to stop and not take another step forward. Levin stomps his foot, furious, and demands to know who Oscar thinks he is giving orders. Oscar's expression goes dead serious. What he's sensing feels exactly like his master's barrier. Exactly. Then it becomes undeniable. The group realizes they're standing inside a massive magic circle. Someone's foot touches the edge of it and the barrier begins to crack apart. Lily raises her staff, eyes wide, staring up at what's unfolding above them. Levin snaps, demanding to know what the hell is going on. Oscar's eyes narrow as he studies the breaking barrier, reading the danger as calmly as he can. Through the crack, on the other side, a hand gripping a dagger ready to strike. He wheels around to the group and tells everyone to get their staves ready. Now, the barrier is coming apart, he tells them again, louder, staves out, get ready to fight. They all look up. The sky above them looks completely wrong. Lily's voice comes out shaky. Is this still even the same forest they were walking through? It isn't. The trees around them are enormous, ancient things, and nothing about this place matches where they were. On one of the massive trunks, a marking carved with the number 5 confirms it. Lily's face drains of color as she asks, are they in the 5th cemetery? One of the students shouts the answer, this is a veteran training ground, way above their level. Oscar's mind is already working. Someone set this trap deliberately. Someone put that magic circle there. An image surfaces in his memory, 5 cloaked figures, deliberate, coordinated. He turns to the group and says the call, use the scroll, send the signal and get help. Levin stands there holding the scroll, listening to his classmate's suggestion. Then without a word, he grabs the scroll with both hands and tears it apart right in front of them. He glares at Oscar as he rips it, something smug sitting behind his eyes. Then he smirks and says it was just some old forgotten teleportation circle. No big deal. He turns to Oscar and says this is actually a golden opportunity. If they nail this training, the Academy's evaluation of him goes through the roof. He strides ahead and the other students murmur that it's exactly what you'd expect from the Aldred heir. Lily falls back and quietly asks Oscar to stay close to her during all of this. Oscar walks with the group and behind his calm expression, he's getting very tired of this situation. Then he stops, his eyes go wide. In the darkness ahead, pairs of eyes watching, waiting. A 3-eyed wolf steps into view, teeth bared, a growl building low in its throat. Levin's face breaks into a grin. He says they finally showed up. He grips his weapon and plants himself, ready to go. Oscar sees this for what it is, a real fight, real experience, and he wants in. Levin cuts him off immediately, tells him to back up and asks what he thinks he's doing. He says he'll handle it personally. This is how a true noble fights. Oscar genuinely wonders what that means. What exactly is the noble way of fighting a wolf? One of the wolves drives a paw into the ground, sharp claws dragging through the dirt. A wolf breaks from the pack and charges straight at Levin. He raises his weapon and sets his stance, ready to take it head-on. There's a grin on his face as he lifts the weapon high to strike. He slams it into the ground and summons a barrier that spreads to cover the entire group. Stone rises from the earth, building a wall between the students and the wolves. The barrier erupts into the pack, sending the creatures flying back and away. He shouts to his teammates, attack them now while they're scattered. One student answers immediately with a blast of wind aimed straight into the pack. Right behind it, another fires a jet of water at the same targets. Both attacks punch through the barrier opening and score a clean hit on one of the wolves. It's working, they're dividing tasks in real time, defending and attacking at once. Oscar watches it all come together and feels it click, so this is how mages fight as a unit. Then Levin takes stock of the situation and realizes there are way too many of them. The numbers are overwhelming. A wolf's attack punches clean through the barrier and slams into one of the students. Thrown a significant distance by the blow, the student hits the ground and can't get back up in time. And then a wolf appears directly behind Lily and she freezes completely. Levin clocks it mid-fight and his expression shifts. The wolf closes in on her, massive, focused, preparing to lunge. It clears the rocks and launches itself straight at her. Oscar is already moving, fire spell forming in his hand. He casts it, hits the wolf dead center and yanks Lily clear of the attack in one motion. The wolf takes the hit full force and drops to the ground, completely out of the fight. Oscar steps in front of Lily, putting himself between her and anything else that might come. She thanks him, genuinely shaken. He tells her it's over. The wolves are down, the group gets a moment to breathe. Night settles over the forest and the group gathers around a fire, resting. Levin says Oscar got a front row seat to watch a real noble fight. He should count himself lucky. Oscar replies that the combination of defensive magic they pulled off was genuinely impressive. Levin blinks. Being complimented by this commoner is not something he was prepared for. But Oscar is already somewhere else in his head, thinking about the kind of individual strength that doesn't rely on a formation. He wonders whether he should just keep grinding the same way he always has. Then Lily's voice pulls him back. She's walking over with something in her hands. She offers him a mug and sits down, looks like she wants to talk. She says she's the one who ended up needing protection tonight and he thanks her for what she did earlier. He takes a sip and then brings up what's been turning over in his mind, the difference in strength he noticed with the defensive magic. He thinks back to the wolf's attack and keeps pressing the question. Levin answers without looking up. Magic hits harder the closer it is to the caster. Simple. He can't help adding that commoners just don't understand these things. Lily steps in and explains the other side of it. The farther magic travels from the caster, the more it returns to nature. It weakens with distance. Oscar nods slowly. The logic of it clicks into place. He turns it over. If the formula and the mana are the same variables, there has to be a way to change the output. He takes a slow drink and wonders aloud, is there really no way to increase its effective range? Lily laughs a little and says she may have made that drink a bit too thick. Oscar smiles back, but he's barely here. His brain is somewhere else entirely. Then his gaze locks onto something. A thought just surfaced. He stares at the mug and says he finally knows what he needs to do. Lily notices he's gone somewhere far away and calls his name, a little concerned. He's looking at the mug, thinking about what it would mean to increase the density of what fills the container. And then the question hits him, isn't this the same principle as the Kiai sword? Elsewhere, a man sits watching the group through a surveillance spell, unseen. He comments on the young Aldrit heir, recognizing the family name behind the display. He steps onto a magic circle and it looks very much like he's preparing to move. He says with a measured look that he'd prefer that particular person to stay quiet for now. Behind him, something massive shifts in the shadows, a huge creature waiting for his command. Back at the main camp, a teacher sits with a cluster of students who already surrendered. They're huddled together, scared, waiting to hear what happens to them. She thinks to herself that the dropout rate is actually low for a class this strong. Then another woman arrives and announces it's time to rotate. She introduces herself, Isabel, the new instructor on watch. The students recognize the name immediately and start whispering, is that Isabel of Destiny? Isabel glances at a spell display and comments on how the students are holding up out there. She notes that the rivals group is performing exactly as expected from the first class. No surprises there. In another section of the forest, a student sits completely unbothered, reading, perched on top of a defeated creature like it's a perfectly normal chair. Someone asks about Oscar. The other teacher says his group's signal has gone dark. Isabel looks at the last known location and says something's off. They were there just a moment ago. Back in the forest, Oscar's group is still sitting around the campfire, resting between encounters. The other members take advantage of the quiet, relaxing, catching their breath. One of the guys wanders toward the tree line and starts practicing with his wand. Oscar sits with his mug, staring into the fire, still deep in thought. He keeps coming back to the Kiai sword, trying to map the way swordsmen apply that technique to what he now knows about mana. He asks himself the question, could the same thing be done using mana instead? Then a noise cuts through the quiet and his head snaps toward the forest. Two of his classmates come bursting out of the trees, screaming for everyone to run. Levin squares up and says more weaklings came to pick a fight with him. Good. Then a pillar of fire explodes in front of the entire group. Levin goes rigid. What the? The flames thin out and die back, and something starts to emerge from the dark. A massive clawed paw steps onto the forest floor, heavy, deliberate. A dragon steps out of the shadows, full-size, eyes on all of them. The students stare in collective disbelief. There is no way that's a dragon. Its mouth opens and it roars, and everyone who wasn't afraid before is afraid now. Levin says what everyone's already thinking, a dragon has absolutely no business being in a place like this. Oscar's expression hardens. Someone put this here, their group is being targeted. The students turn to Levin and beg him to use the scroll, forgetting he already shredded it. Lily just stands there, repeating that this can't be real. Oscar grabs his weapon and says what no one wants to hear, they have no choice. They fight. Lily turns to him and asks if he actually intends to fight a dragon. His classmates jump in. They tell him that with Levin's defensive magic they can at least absorb the hits. Oscar reads the situation and realizes if they hold out long enough the instructors will notice something is very wrong. Without hesitating, Levin drives his weapon into the ground and raises it high. He summons an earth spirit shield. The ground shudders in response. A massive stone wall rises, but it only covers him. His classmates scream he left them completely exposed. He shouts back that he intends to survive, even if that means he's the only one who does. The guys stare at him in disbelief. This is the person who swore he'd protect everyone. One of them yells that there's nowhere to run. The dragon has every single one of them in its sights. Lily grips her staff, steadies herself, and says the only way out is through. They have to fight. She draws a magic circle and fires an earth spell directly at the dragon. The smoke clears and the students hold their breath. The dragon walks out of it without a scratch. One of the students says the attack did nothing. They're dealing with advanced tier magic resistance. Lily shouts for Oscar to run. She'll draw its attention and buy him time. She turns to him, not knowing what else to say, waiting to see what he decides. Oscar looks back at her, and his expression is calm, like he already has a plan. The dragon launches 2 energy blasts at the group. One of the students screams that he doesn't want to die, raw panic taking over. The dragon's mouth opens wide again, mana pooling visibly as it charges up something much bigger. Oscar turns to Lily. She stares back at him, confused by how composed he is. He sees it. The dragon is pulling mana directly from the surrounding environment, using it as fuel. And he realizes, for all its terrifying power, that absorption is the only trick this creature actually has. He closes his eyes, pulls his focus inward, and begins to concentrate. He grips the dagger and says it's time to find out which one of them is actually stronger. He faces the dragon dead on and braces himself for the incoming strike. He refines his power, pulling it tighter, denser, and lines up what he's about to do. The dragon unleashes it, a massive blast of energy aimed to end this. Behind the barrier, the other students watch through their fingers, terrified. Oscar throws himself in front of Lily and pulls her away from the blast path. Then he fires back, a concentrated pillar of energy launched straight at the creature. It hits the dragon's mouth directly, cutting off the attack mid-charge. The force of the strike tears through the dragon's body, landing damage that's impossible to ignore. The dragon gets thrown back and crashes to the ground as the students watch in stunned silence. Lily stares at the outcome from the ground, completely unable to process what she just witnessed. Oscar stands in the clearing, looking at the result, calm, analytical, serious. The scene cuts away to somewhere else, the night sky dark and vast above the trees. The man watching through the surveillance spell scoffs. A freshman just took down his creature. He calls it a joke. And then real confusion sets in. He has no idea what kind of power was just used. He glances around, paranoid, trying to figure out if anyone sensed him out there. His eyes fill with something cold and hateful. He vows the boy will be eliminated. He declares it firmly, power-like that should only exist in the hands of noble blood. Back in the forest, Oscar stands over the aftermath of his own attack, studying the result. A huge smile breaks across his face. The plan actually worked. He clenches his fist. He genuinely cannot believe the new ability pulled through. He thinks to himself that this theory could only ever have come from someone who used to be a swordsman. The dragon lies motionless on the forest floor, completely defeated. The students exchange glances, barely daring to say it. Did they actually just win? They peer out from behind the barrier, still half expecting something to go wrong. From behind his stone wall, Levin stares at the scene and says this whole thing is ridiculous. And then it really hits him. A commoner just protected him. He has no words. Lily lowers her staff and quietly asks what that power even was. Then Oscar's legs give out. He loses his balance and starts to go down. Lily shouts his name and moves to catch him before he hits the ground. He makes it to a sit and tells her he's fine, just tired, but he can feel it, the price of pushing that ability. His body is letting him know. Then a sound from the forest stops everyone. Lily tenses immediately, asking if something else is coming for them. Something large moves out of the trees. Stone, massive, familiar. A voice comes with it, a professor, saying she followed traces of a teleport and came to investigate. She looks at the group with a smile and asks if everyone is okay. The students just stare at her, every single one of them speechless. Then Oscar calls out, it's Isabel. He's shocked to see her standing there. His body makes the decision for him. He's done. He goes down, collapses completely in front of everyone. Isabel moves toward the dragon's body and crouches beside it, examining it closely. She says she'll hear the full story once they're back. The other students gather around Oscar, trying to wake him, shaking him gently. From a short distance away, Levin watches the scene unfold, still processing, still not ready to say anything. Isabel climbs up onto a rock and gazes out at the horizon, quietly sitting with what just happened. The sun begins to rise and spills light across the forest canopy. The night is finally over. Back at the academy, the imposing main building fills the frame. In the director's office, Isabel sits across from him as he hears the details of recent events. The director says he can't believe something like this happened here. At this academy, Isabel waits, watching his face as the report settles over him. He looks grim, says it plainly, the academy has been infiltrated. That lands hard. The word infiltrated hits differently when you're standing inside the walls. The director turns to Oscar and tells him he did well to come out of that alive. Oscar says it only happened because he made the decision to get stronger. The director listens. Something in the boy's answer gives him pause. He turns to the window and says he has to tell him something difficult. Outside, students move through the campus, laughing, talking, none of them aware of any of this. The director calls Oscar by name and prepares to deliver what he has to say. He tells him he must leave the academy and live his life without magic. Oscar stares at him, completely still. He heard the words, he just can't accept them. His mind goes back to his former life, his former title, his former strength. He asks himself if that's really what's waiting for him, a life without magic. Again, he keeps replaying the past, the things he achieved, the weight they carried. He remembers someone telling him that magic isn't the only thing in the world. That there are other reasons to keep going. He'd picked up his sword and told himself not to just throw everything away. He thinks of the people from that life, the ones he fought alongside, and something in him steadies. He looks up and says no, he cannot accept this. He sits in that chair across from the director with every ounce of determination he has. He says it loud and clear. After everything he went through to get here, he is not walking away. The director blinks. He asks him to repeat that. Oscar's expression softens slightly and he says he genuinely appreciates the concern. Then he says he has an idea. If the target is already inside the academy, then so is the opportunity. The director leans forward and asks what he has in mind. Oscar straightens up and says it without flinching. He'll act as bait. The director stares at him. He's not sure whether to be impressed or alarmed. He asks the obvious question, is the boy not afraid of dying? Oscar smiles and says he has absolutely no intention of getting caught. That gets the director. He starts laughing, a real, genuine laugh. He laughs like he hasn't in a while, clearly taken by the student's sheer confidence. He says fine, if the boy is that resolved, he'll match it. He extends his hand across the desk. Oscar grabs it with a grin, deal sealed. The director then adds one more thing before Oscar fights. He needs a new staff. Oscar looks down at his weapon, still not quite sure what the issue is. Then he sees it, the staff is broken. It's done. Scene cuts to the library, the place that's apparently doubling as his new training ground. Director hands over replacement staff. Isabel looks it over and says it's a beginner's staff, but it'll do for now. Oscar asks the honest question, does he even need a staff to use his abilities? She explains it plainly, try writing with your finger, same idea. If mana is the ink, then the staff is the pen, that's the relationship. Oscar finds himself thinking back to when he used to look at other students' staffs with envy. He looks at the broken one in his hand and wonders what actually happened to it. His best guess, the staff couldn't handle the density of his refined mana, it just gave out. Then someone calls his name. He turns, Lily is waiting for him. She greets him with a smile, clearly glad to see him on his feet. He apologizes for pulling her into his errand on her day off. She puts a hand on her chest and tells them to stop overthinking and just go find the staff. They arrive at the first shop and Oscar is immediately struck by how many options there are. The shopkeeper proudly tells them the selection is something they take great pride in. A staff gets brought forward. A man points out the quality of the gems inlaid on it. Lily glances at the price tag and visibly flinches. Oscar looks at the number, 1 million coins. He puts it back down. They end up fleeing several shops in a row, the prices apparently following a similar theme. One of the sellers seems particularly intimidating and they get out of there fast. After what feels like a full tour of the city's most expensive stores, they collapse onto a bench in a plaza. Oscar says the obvious, those staffs are completely out of his budget. Lily explains that since most mages come from noble families, a lot of the market is built around appearance over function. Oscar tells her she should head back, he'll keep looking on his own. She shuts that down immediately. She's staying until they find something, end of discussion. Then they both spotted a shop across the way with a staff displayed out front. Lily says it looks like they sell staffs there too. Man nearby immediately warns them, do not go in there. Another explains that the owner has a habit of pressuring people into buying things they don't actually want. Oscar looks at the sign and thinks about that for a moment, a shop nobody wants to walk into. Lily looks genuinely spooked. She grabs his sleeve. She begs him not to go in there, please, under any circumstances. He opens the door and walks straight in. He says it's simply, if the shop were really that bad, it would have closed by now. Inside, dark, dusty, and quiet in a way that feels deliberately uninviting. Lily follows him in and immediately looks like she regrets it. Oscar moves toward the counter, scanning the items on display. A voice asks if they're customers or just browsing. Behind the counter, a man sits on a stool carving a piece of wood, looking like he's daring them to waste his time. He says it without looking up. With all the staffs in the world, the young man ended up here. Oscar watches him, doesn't react. Then something shifts in the shopkeeper's expression like a switch got flipped. He points at Oscar. He's noticed something. A knife comes flying in Oscar's direction without warning. Lily yelps. Oscar doesn't move. The shopkeeper says bluntly he's not selling the kid anything. He points and says it louder. He doesn't sell staffs to swordsmen, not this shop. Oscar stares at him. That reaction was not what he expected. Lily says she told them this place was dangerous and starts pulling toward the exit. Oscar doesn't move. He says he's buying a staff here. He smiles and says the shopkeeper has genuinely caught his interest. Lily stares at him. Is he seriously considering buying from this shop right now? Oscar turns to the shopkeeper and asks calmly what exactly gave him away. The shopkeeper's eyes narrow as he starts actually looking at the boy, really looking. He takes in the way Oscar carries himself, the way he stands, the way he dresses. He studies the hands, reads what's written in them. He watches the way Oscar distributes his weight as he shifts his footing. He points and says it, the center of gravity, subtle but unmistakable. Oscar doesn't confirm or deny it. He holds the shopkeeper's gaze without a word. Lily steps in and says Oscar isn't actually a swordsman. Oscar thinks to himself he didn't expect to be read that quickly, at all. He decides to just be honest. He tells the shopkeeper he started learning magic 6 months ago. The man's expression shifts. Lily adds brightly that he's enrolled at the Magic Academy. The shopkeeper sits back and asks what brought him in here looking for a staff. Oscar explains the one he was using broke during a fight. He sets the broken staff on the counter for the shopkeeper to see. The shopkeeper picks it up, turns it over, and says it's completely finished. Useless. He explains the cause. The internal magic circle was destroyed by mana overload. Oscar asks what he means by that exactly. The shopkeeper breaks it down. Larger staffs can absorb more mana, but they're significantly harder to control. He holds up the broken staff and says the beginner shape is more intuitive. Most people start here for a reason. Oscar thinks back to his teachers. Their staffs are large and intricate by comparison. He asks the shopkeeper directly what kind of staff would actually suit him. The shopkeeper replies that he hasn't decided yet whether he's going to sell him one at all. He gets up from the stool and approaches Oscar, who watches him without backing up. He tells the boy to prove himself, find the best staff in the entire shop on his own. He points at the shelves and says if he's satisfied with the choice, he'll make the sale. Oscar turns to the shelves and starts working through them, reading each one carefully. Lily and the shopkeeper stand back and watch, waiting to see what he lands on. Lily thinks to herself that a staff's value comes down to its materials. That's the foundation. Then Oscar's hand stops on one of them. He's feeling something. Lily's eyes go wide. Is that Hagenum wood? Could that be what he's reaching for? She thinks about what that would mean. One of those staffs is worth a year of living in luxury. She silently hopes Oscar picks that one. Come on, Oscar, that one. He turns and reaches for a different direction entirely. He pulls out a simple, plain-looking staff and says he's made his choice. He holds up the piece of wood, that one. Lily and the shopkeeper both stare at him. Lily nearly yells, the most expensive staff in this entire shop is literally right there. Oscar says he wasn't asked to find the most expensive one, he was asked to find the best one. The shopkeeper's eyes sharpen. He asks why that staff. Oscar smiles and says it honestly, it felt warm, like it was meant to be held. He turns and lightly touches the shopkeeper with the staff as he says what he noticed. He says the staff isn't broken, not the way the others showed where it's intact. He finishes by saying the scariest thing in a fight isn't getting hit, it's losing your equipment when you need it most. With a quiet smile, he says this is a good staff for the right person. The shopkeeper stares at him, something moved in his expression that he's trying to keep still. Then he turns away, and when he looks back, he's surprised. Genuinely. Oscar asks again, will he sell it to him? The shopkeeper says quietly that staff was made for his son, a long time ago. Oscar asks why it's sitting in the shop if it's not for sale. The shopkeeper says the staff outlasted its owner. On the counter, a photograph, the shopkeeper standing next to a young boy. Oscar holds the staff. He says what he thinks quietly, a staff like this can't really be called just good. The shopkeeper turns his back. The silence says what words can't, they should leave. Oscar accepts it. He says it's a shame. Lily gently tells him it'll be okay. Then the shopkeeper's voice comes from behind them. Where do they think they're going? Oscar turns back, confused. The shopkeeper tells him to wait. He's going to find him a staff that actually fits. The two of them look at each other and light up. Lily lets out a long breath and says she was nervous this whole time. Oscar apologizes for the stress. Then the shop door opens. A new figure steps inside. It's the same man who sent the dragon after them in the forest, and nobody in this room was expecting him. He goes rigid the moment he sees them and asks what they're doing here. Oscar and Lily stare back at him, equally surprised, just caught off guard by the sudden appearance. The man's hand finds his whip. His eyes move over the group slowly. Oscar's mind sharpens the moment he sees it. He knows exactly how much danger they're in. Lily breaks the tension first. She asks pleasantly if the professor also came to the shop to buy a wand. He says yes, gives nothing else away. Then the shopkeeper's voice cuts across the room. He recognizes the professor, already knew him. The professor says he seems busy, waves it off politely and leaves. He's out the door and walking down the street before anyone in the room processes what just happened. Lily watches the door and asks what that was about. What did he even want? The shopkeeper watches after him and mutters that the man is as restless as ever. The disdain is clear. He turns back and holds out the new staff. He tells Oscar this is his new partner. Oscar takes it and stares. This is not what he was expecting. Wood, but with an axe blade fitted to the upper end. Part staff, part weapon. The shopkeeper explains the material. It came from the legendary origin tree. A tree that never dies on an island far away from everything. Its canopy is always full, always green, alive in a way that defies explanation. Lily's voice jumps an octave. Staffs made from that tree are considered treasures. The shopkeeper smiles and confirms it. The thing is built to last. Lily stares at it and says something like that must cost an impossible amount. The shopkeeper says quietly that it was meant for his son, for when he came back. He keeps his back turned as he says it, just like his son's wand. It was never for sale. He drops into his stool and says he won't be selling anything else today. He adds there isn't another staff in the shop that would suit the boy anyway. Oscar holds it. He feels the weight of what it means. He thanks the shopkeeper genuinely, quietly, with real weight behind it. The shopkeeper waves off the sentiment and tells him to stop standing there and test it already. Oscar raises the staff and starts to focus. His eyes close. He reaches inward for the mana. Blue energy begins to flow outward from his hand, slowly enveloping the entire staff. The shopkeeper watches. His expression is controlled, but there's surprise underneath it. Oscar opens his eyes and says it's strange. It feels like he's been using this staff for years. The shopkeeper tells them both to get out. He's losing business having them stand in his doorway. Oscar remembers the professor and decides to ask before they leave. He asks the shopkeeper if Professor Eamon is a regular here. Back at the academy, the students file into the classroom for the next lesson. Someone points them out right away. That's the group that ended up in the cemetery. The whispers go around the room. It's basically a miracle they made it back. Then someone drops the real news. Levin tried to protect only himself and leave the others behind. Crack of a whip silences the entire room. Professor Eamon glares at the students who fall over themselves, apologizing. Then his eyes find Oscar sitting quietly in his seat, already looking back at him. Oscar holds his gaze, no tension in his face, no reaction, just watching. Back in the shop, the shopkeeper answers Oscar's question. Eamon was the captain of his son's squad. He also says the professor was on the battlefield the day his son died. A flashback surfaces. Eamon at the shop, younger, speaking with the shopkeeper. Shopkeeper says it was Eamon who brought the staff back. Oscar holds the broken staff and listens to every word. Lily says quietly that she had no idea about any of this. The shopkeeper points at Oscar and says the professor was always kind to his son. Oscar takes that in. His expression goes very still and very serious. He looks at the staff in his hands and says this was used hard, in real combat. He says the son must have been an exceptional mage. The shopkeeper stares at him, asks how he could possibly know that. Oscar's mind snaps back to the classroom, to the seat he's sitting in right now, and the man standing at the front of it. He goes back through it. The day of the field training, the instructors present the timing of everything. The certainty that settles in his chest carries a cold edge. Professor Eamon, the one who orchestrated the attack. And the professor still doesn't know that Oscar has figured it out. That's the advantage. Oscar's jaw sets. This time he moves first. In a dark room, Eamon stands in communication with a voice that belongs to someone unseen. The entity says it recognizes the skill he demonstrated on the battlefield. Eamon replies that he is fully aware of what's expected of him. The entity asks, does he find the academy more treacherous than actual war? He answers no, but there's something in his posture that suggests the question landed. He promises results, military-grade results, and soon, when the conversation ends, he turns and walks out of the room alone, carrying the weight of the mission with him. He stands in the middle of the empty room, thinking about everything that's been set in motion. Back at the academy, the building stands imposing and still against the sky. The director asks the question directly, was it Eamon who attacked him during training? He says it plainly. He finds the accusation very hard to believe. He explains that Eamon was a decorated man who put his life on the line for others. Oscar says he hears that and he's still certain he's not wrong. The director says if Oscar is certain then he takes it seriously, but he needs proof. Oscar smiles and says that's exactly why he's standing here right now. The director listens carefully as Oscar lays out the strategy, every detail. He says it will happen again. Just like in the training, the professor will look for another opening, and when that opportunity appears, the enemy will take it. No hesitation. The director goes quiet, working through the implications. Then he shares what he knows: there's an upcoming escort mission for the Imperial Princess. Princess Ariel was already scheduled to enroll in the Academy's first class. But a spell's side effects forced her to delay. She couldn't come when she was supposed to. Professor Ruth confirms it. The enrollment was pushed back for exactly that reason. She looks serious as she says they'll need to travel to the capital to receive the princess in person. The professor announces it. This escort mission is the assignment for all of them. One of the female students looks up from her book, clearly interested. The rival listens with the same focused, composed attention he brings to everything. Oscar turns the mission over in his mind. This is exactly the kind of condition Eamon would exploit. Eamon faces the class and asks if anyone has questions. The rival raises his hand immediately. He asks about the new class member, specifically whether his strength actually measures up to everyone else's. He wants to know if he can assume the commoner's ability rivals their own. Oscar meets his gaze, steady, certain. Eamon responds, based on the field training alone, Oscar has already surpassed all of them. The rival's face goes slack. He stares at the professor like the words just stopped making sense. Even the girl with the book looks up from her reading, genuinely taken off guard. He insists the Oscar he encountered was unremarkable, barely anything to speak of. Oscar sits there and listens to every word without changing his expression. Eamon points out calmly that despite that impression, several important people have spoken very highly of him. The rival says his own grades have been exceptional and none of this makes any sense to him. He's angry now, and it shows. He points directly at Oscar and challenges him to a duel in front of the entire class. He demands Oscar show every drop of his ability as a mage, no holding back. Eamon watches the exchange with tired eyes but doesn't step in to stop it. Ruth, on the other hand, quietly thinks through the implications. If things keep going this way, the mission is going to be a problem. Then Eamon adds his own condition with a slight smile. The loser of the duel gets removed. Oscar looks at his rival and accepts. In an arena, they take their positions across from each other. The duel is about to begin. Oscar grips his staff and wonders silently how things escalated to this. Then something catches his eye and his expression shifts. His opponent just moved. The rival raises his wand and a chant begins, ice magic building in the air around him. Multiple ice magic circles materialize around him, spinning, layering. Oscar watches it form with genuine focus. His rival shouts for him to brace himself. Oscar thinks it through. Under absolutely no circumstances can he be removed from this mission. He grips the staff, locks in. His eyes settle and his power surfaces, quiet, controlled, and ready. He calls back across the arena and says he accepts the challenge. Zazan Gylotis.